Thanks for joining me, Jeff.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me again.
Well, we've got an interesting story here. There's a lawsuit or lawsuits in the works that could potentially change how people buy properties. Currently, in order to list a house for sale on the multiple listing services, which is really a necessity, you have to agree to pay a real estate agent about a 6% commission. She'll split equally with the agent for the buyer. Your agent keeps 3%. She pays the other 3% to the buyer's agent. The lawsuits are finally coming to a head after several years, and if the plaintiffs succeed, they could rewrite those rules. The seller might no longer pay out the agent's commissions after the sales close. Instead, the buyer would pay that agent directly. The first case to reach trial will be Sitzer versus NAR, which was filed in Missouri. That's scheduled for an October trial. Total damages there could reach $4 billion. The larger of the two cases, Morel, also versus NAR, damages could total more than 40 billion. That case was filed in Illinois. That could reach trial in the first half of 2024. The plaintiffs in these cases are taking aim at the rules that they say hinder negotiations over compensation. Their primary goal is to decouple the commissions paid to the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. If buyers have to pay out of pocket for those agents, those buyer agents, we could be looking at a world where they simply choose not to have an agent to purchase the property. They might try to pay less. They might try to pay hourly rates. But if these cases succeed, we could see the end of compensation automatically going to the buyer's agent. It seems like potentially a pretty big change in terms of how homes are purchased. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
Look, I think there's probably a lot of unintended consequences. To me, maybe there's even some lack of information that people and it's really kind of what I mean by unintended consequences, that lack of information people have considered. I think if you look at it from a residential side purely, there's a lot of real estate agents that are out there that represent people that aren't already doing this full time. This is a second job. Although they may not be full time doing it, they do have a good knowledge base of how to navigate through the real estate contract, how to navigate through the process of closing. I think you're going to see some buyers that are going to try to do this themselves, so that they're not, they're already cash strapped. They're not trying to, spend more money. A lot of them are doing, HUD financing. They're doing 3% downs. They're not putting 20% down, so they're not sitting on cash to be able to pay an agent a fee to close this for them. And I think on the seller's side, realistically, and I'm not arguing one way or the other for this, I guess, to clarify, but I think from the seller's side, they should probably consider the fact that now that you have a streamlined process, you may not have such a streamlined process before. You may have hiccups because, again, buyers are going to try to navigate this through themselves. And they don't really know what to look for, don't know anything about addendums. They're already not paying attention to due diligence periods, to closing periods, days when they need to get stuff done. I think the process gets muddied and becomes a lot difficult to navigate. While I can appreciate the side of a seller not, or these plaintiffs not really wanting to pay out fees for everybody else, I think the long run is that it probably helps the process in opposition to the alternative, which is hindering the process and slowing closings down and creating more problems, more lawsuits that will come out of this as a result.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think the case seems to have merit. I understand the idea of giving people options of not forcing them into a situation where they have to pay commissions to the buyers, brokers. That all seems to legally make sense. But I think where we ultimately end up here is that probably a few people trying to cut corners are going to end up with more trouble than it was worth trying to cut those corners. And I believe in capitalism. I think they should have the ability and the right to do that. But we both have been around the business, in the business, and I think good brokers generally earn their compensation,
Oh, for sure.
earn their fees, and there will be a cost to most transactions. I mean, certainly there's some transactions Um, some cases where somebody knows exactly what they're buying, why they're buying, and it doesn't make sense for them to pay that rate or whatnot. I'm sure there's going to be some cases where it's definitely a benefit, but I suspect there's going to be, if these lawsuits succeed, and it's opened up more. I think we're probably going to see more instances where people end up shooting themselves in the foot,
Oh, for
than they
sure.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other side too is if moving to commercial, if you look at it, um, there's a number of firms that claim exclusivity, and they are saying that they're not going to pay buyer's agent a fee. In the commercial world, that I don't want to say there's precedent that that's there. I mean, there is, but the truth is sometimes to close a deal, those brokers that are claiming exclusivity are also splitting the fee that they have to get a deal done, because they don't want to deal directly with with the buyer and and specifically there's a line of trust that they want to make sure that they're not breaching for both sides, both seller and buyer side. So I think there's some consideration that needs to be given to it. The learning curve for buyers without agents, and in the learning curve for sellers without buyers having an agent. You know,
So you don't necessarily expect this to have too big of an impact on the commercial world because we already see these issues kind of dealt with in a way right now.
yeah, I mean to some degree. I don't want to say precedent's been set, but there are, again, you've got the CBREs and some of the other big firms who just will tell you we're not splitting a fee, we're exclusive, and buyer's got to do it. I think alternatively, that comment is it's already well known that if a seller is requiring that, then there might be some sort of accommodation that they give up for the price. Maybe the price gets reduced a little bit so that a buyer can afford to pay the seller. Um, you know, I think the other side is the unintended consequence just dawned on me is on the residential, you're going to have to figure out, you're going to get buyers who are going to say, well, I'm reducing the price because I got to figure out a way to pay my realtor. Maybe I figure out if a lender is going to finance that. So, I think like I mentioned before, the cash to close requirements become a burden for buyers if they've got to pay a 3% fee that they otherwise are already paying to get their loan.
Yeah, so I think we don't expect too big of an impact on the commercial space from this. On the residential space, there certainly will be some buyers that benefit from more flexibility, but I think we're both suspicious that the bigger impact will probably be some people trying to do it themselves that really shouldn't be, and ending up with some unanticipated problems where they just probably would have been better off paying the commission.
Oh, for sure. I think that you're going to end up with a lot of failed closings and a lot of lawsuits associated with escrow, escrow disputes.
Okay, so I think that's probably our bottom line is that it turns out when it comes to major lawsuits that the one group of people that always seem to win would be the lawyers, and they'll probably do even better with things being more opened up, and we can probably expect more suits in the future if these suits are successful.
Of course, of course. It's always the
Okay,
unintended consequence.
well, I don't think anybody will argue with that conclusion. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.